Good morning, everyone. Just give it a couple of minutes for everyone to make their way in. Lovely. Well, it's 2 minutes past, so I suggest we make a start and hopefully the late arrivals won't miss all the good stuff. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Future Office, kindly hosted by Farebrothers. I know many, if not all of us, are currently in the process of deciding what our office work environment will look like in the future. Perhaps one of the few good things to come from this past year is this opportunity to revisit how we operate, think about what is best for our staff and our businesses. I know many of the staff in my firm are keen to retain some element of home working, although enthusiasm does seem to have waned a bit recently as the novelty of being at home has firmly worn off. However, we all know well that there can be challenges in working remotely. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has a regular Wi-Fi breakdown. So I'm excited to hear what our speakers have to tell us today. Our speakers today are Charlie Thompson, a partner at Real Estate Advisors Farebrother, and he is joined by David Koski of Work Life. So without further ado, I will hand over to Charlie.
Thank you, Jess. Very kind intro. And thank you everyone for joining to listen to me and David go through what we think is the future of the offices. But I'm going to, just a bit of background about me. I've been a partner at Farebrother for very long time, 21 years. I deal mainly with leasing and occupier work, essentially. So heavily involved in the market. Obviously, the last 12 months has been awful, so it can only get better. But I'll go through how we're feeling with the future at the moment, and also how tenants have been, what they've been doing in the market and so on. So if can you just jump on the first slide, please, Marie? Obviously, I'm going to be talking through some bits you already know, but I'm just seeing how what tenants' feedback has recently going. So obviously, the hybrid working. I mean, since we went into our first pandemic, first lockdown, I didn't know what Microsoft Teams was, so we are now fully embraced with it. It's been, I think we've been advanced by 10 years of how we've been working. And going through that way with home and the office, which has been fine, but I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on. There are also plenty of pitfalls with that, which I'll touch on. Root and branch, you've probably heard this a lot as well, which I think for London, most of the businesses are small. They're not these big global businesses, which, there's a lot in the city core, but not necessarily all across the West End and so on. So having the root element in the branch is all very well, hearing these key words, but essentially if people can't work from home and they don't want to come in the office, then they either have to go in the office or they can take some smaller offices or serviced offices close by to where they live, depending on their commute and so on. I've heard this recently a lot, embrace the change. And it's true, as I touched on a second ago, Microsoft Teams, I again didn't know what it was, Zoom and all the rest of it. We've had to change the way we operate. And the way we at Farebrother, if I just talk about my business, we went on looked at our business plan immediately, how we're going to operate. Luckily, the office cost is the second biggest cost on any on accounts and second line, underneath salaries. So we were able to change the way we operated very quickly. Now we're in a serviced co-working office, mainly because we didn't know what we're going to be doing, and our lease came to an end in December. And I think, that has been fantastic for us. One, we're saving some money, but also just gives it, using the lounge area. I'm in a meeting room which we're using now, and it's just been fantastic for the way we've operated. But again, I'll go into that a bit more detail later on. The biggest thing I think for any businesses are the next 2 points, the team impact. It's all about, I'm an ex-rugby player, so I'm used to that, people around me helping me drive forward the business and so on. And it's, I think that's what we lack. Teams and Zoom calls all very well, but you don't have that conversation in the office about something small which actually can create something big. And also the younger guys, including me, I'm an old, not much hair, I've pulled it all out recently. But the lack of mentoring, that's really important. We just don't have that anymore. I can't learn off my older colleagues, or even I can't teach some of my younger ones, albeit they don't listen to much what I say anyway, but never mind. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what have we seen? What tenants are not sure what they're doing, and I get that, and I think it's really important, and I'm sure most businesses have done this because we've learned very hard, very quickly. Some businesses have done very well in the pandemic, and some have obviously haven't done very well. And real estate is one which has been hit exceptionally hard. David and I can vouch for that. But looking at what you've got space-wise, can you fit in it? Can you change the way? David, I'm not sure how, I'll bring David into this, I'm not sure how you've seen with some of your inquiries and the clients you're talking to, what are they looking for on their change of way they're working?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the biggest, I'll give a bit of background in our business later, but the biggest thing that we've noticed has been the common trend of downsizing. I think there was a move towards agile working because it's in businesses' interests to reduce their footprint. They're now on leases are on their balance sheets. There's lots of reasons why they're doing it, but certainly what COVID has done has sort of accelerated that trend. And I think what's been really interesting, particularly in sort of the co-work and service market, which we operate in, is that a lot of the occupiers now are actually coming from traditional leases, having managed the space themselves, and are looking to downsize. And there are different products for different, sizes of business. But I think downsizing and businesses being more open to their teams working slightly more agilely. I don't think we're going to get to the 5 day a week across the board, but I think 1 or 2 days a week, and not everyone in the office, and that the consequence of that means businesses can take less space, and obviously it's better for them to take less space because it's cheaper. So that's been the biggest trend that we've seen, and I think you're going to see that from the big PLC listed businesses, Barclays giving up on their HQs and all this, you're seeing loads of stats and things coming out of the press, but that's going to go all the way down to, the SMEs and even smaller businesses.
Yeah, exactly what I'm going to touch on later is exactly that comment. I mean, the real problem I've had with some of my clients, which I've been speaking to, so I should turn my phone off, I apologise, is they're staying, if they've got a long lease and they've got too much space, with the change of ways that David just talked about, obviously you can sublease, you can assign your lease, you can obviously stay and refit it and work with it and make it more for the agile working side of things, instead of just bang lots of desks and so on. It's more collaborative space. So people are looking at doing that and investing in their business, which is obviously either invest in the office space to make it work, and technology. There's so many things. But I think what I have seen, and this is the trend, exactly what David just said, people who are looking at offices now, we've seen an increase of since January to March on the amount of viewings we're doing. So across all the types of properties, from the best to the smallest and not so wonderful offices. We've had, January was around about 25 viewings, and then February was about 50, and we were already up to 53, 54 today, albeit I know it's Easter next week, but we've got a few in the diary or so on. So we probably expect to hit probably 60, 65 viewings before the Easter break. And I think that's, it's just showing how the market's starting to take some shape. But most of the tenants we're looking at are looking for really good quality space. reduction of size. We call this a flight to quality, the quality of space. And so that reducing in size is saving some money, but spending a little bit more on the rent per square foot is taking to a better building, which provides amazing amenities for the tenants, or staff. So better showers, facilities, whatever it might be, to even the lounge spaces which landlords are providing. This is when we moved to the service office here. We didn't look to, we wanted a better quality building because we were in nice enough offices, but we wanted the bits. Just having a room is all very well, but having the added on of having the lounge downstairs in this building is absolutely fantastic. We're using it all the time now for catching up with colleagues, spatially aware and so on, and they've got it all right in this space here. And I think that's what will happen going forward. So I think the service side, the managed side, which David will talk about later, is sort of what people will be looking at more as well.
Charlie, one thing to add, I suppose, and you touched upon it, I think the flight to quality is a really key one, because this work now has almost, it's become a consumer experience, and in the whole, business owners know that there's, they want to get their teams back because of all the things you talked you're missing, and you talk through this that's missing when you're remote. But the office, given that it's not going to be the days of forcing people in, then business owners are going to need to entice their staff back in. And the office is going to be a really key part of that, of creating an environment in a space which has got the amenity, which runs well, whatever size you are, which is going to be a really key factor. And I think that's why, as a starting point, we're seeing, obviously, like you said, Charlie, we're seeing the quality, quality buildings and quality offerings being attractive, but also we're actually seeing occupiers, how they set up their spaces, really making it, thinking about how their staff can collaborate, the amenity they can put in their own spaces, how they can manage it properly, to make it a great environment for people. And I think that's going to be really key coming out of this, because now, people have seen that, the other option is the kitchen table, people, which obviously is not good, but I think there is definitely something in a change happening where business owners are thinking really carefully, and businesses, about how they can not entice their staff back, but encourage their staff to really want to be in the office and collaborate with their colleagues.
Absolutely. I think, part of the offering that we're advising our clients to do now is on the smallest, below 5,000 square feet, so 50, 60 staff, or even 70 staff in some cases back in the day. They're fitting these out, and exactly what Dave was saying, it's that quality, more collaborative. So it's actually not that, in one recently we've done, there's about 40, 45 desks and 5,000 square feet, which is probably about right, but it's the space of the kitchen, the collaborative areas, it's all in that whole area based around the kitchen, which gives it so much more energy. Meeting rooms are there, and also I call them little Zoom rooms, so smaller rooms which people can go on and have these calls without having to ask people to be quiet. Because actually I've found it really difficult recently coming in the office when people are coming in more. I can't concentrate on my calls, or I'm speaking really loud, or I'm wearing my headphones like Jess is wearing. And, it's really difficult, but it's, we'll get there. MJ, can you go to the next slide, please? So I did a little bit of research, and it's very hard to talk about the smaller business, which, as I touched on earlier, is mainly London and made up of. But I thought I'd just throw some stats in, and also there's a poll after this, which I forgot to mention at the beginning, which a bit of interaction with the participants. But just I'll just read some of the stats I've read. So Lloyds Bank, 77% chose or choosing to work at home, which, okay, that's fine. That's one of their little things they released. HSBC on a footprint across the globe, we reduce their office capacity by 40%. Goldman Sachs haven't seen any pandemic whatsoever, and they've been in the office all the time, apart from probably some of these lockdowns, but they've really encouraged their staff, and they've built their new HQ. I'm pointing because it's just over there, just near our office, which is ginormous, and they cater for everything for their staff in there. And it's, and then when the first lockdown kicked in, they were out looking for 20,000 square feet just to put bikes and showers in. So, of lower ground space, which they didn't actually do in the end, because they worked out they could fit it in their own. JP Morgan have made it pretty clear that they all want their staff to come back, but they need to get the balance of home and work. They still want their staff back, but they don't want to upset the apple cart too much. Adelshaw Goddard, no real change. They want to get back, but they're conscious of, well, of getting everyone back, but also to make sure the balance, very similar to JP Morgan, they would prefer to get everyone back 5 days a week. But I think what they've seen in some of the more professional businesses is that take the commute out, which is essentially an hour either way, beginning of the day and at the end, is that if people can work a bit harder at home, it's more billable hours. And so, some of the businesses have actually flourished in the sort of last 12 months. Premier League, I only know this as one of my friend works there, and he was telling me about it, but they are really wanting people to come back 3 days a week. And it's not necessarily the middle days, it's where you choose to. So if you want to break it up, you can, or a couple of days and another day, it's very relaxed, but it's all done on a booking system. If people are coming back now, and slowly they will be coming back more and more. PwC, exactly the same, 3 to 4 days a week. So, as we found, there's more, and as David's touched on, that's what we're seeing more and more, and I'll touch on that in a second as well. But David, have you got anything to add on the corporates?
No, not really. I mean, I think this trend was happening anyway. They're all looking to downsize. It's obviously a good excuse for them to do it. I think the interesting dynamic with, so that there's definitely a rational benefit for why these big corporates want to downsize. The interesting thing is, on the other side, there's obviously some talk around a lot of employees pushing for permanent home working. It's an interesting balance, because you do wonder at what point do corporates think, well, that if your role does not need to be in the office and I'm paying you a London salary, at what point does that not make sense? And not only will we not have the office, but we'll actually outsource your role to someone up north or in another country. So it is. I definitely think there's employees will have an invested interest in showing their face in the office, and I think it's been. I don't think it's short-sighted, but I think eventually it may become an issue if you've got certain team members within businesses who make clear that their role doesn't need to be an in-person role, but they're being paid a London salary. I think it's an interesting dynamic that it hasn't really been talked about, but I think it's sort of the elephant in the room.
You just put it in there, absolutely.
Yeah, well, it was already in there. I've unveiled it. Yeah.
You've taken the sheet off, exactly.
Yeah.
MJ, do you want to do the first poll we were having today, please? So one of the things I've asked is, if you had a lease expire in the next 12 months, what would you consider doing? It's all make-believe unless you do have one, but it's renew, happy as you are, reduce the size, save some money, reduce the size but get better quality for my staff, or move to service and keep it flexible. Flexible is one of the things I haven't really discussed too much, but it's obviously flexibility is key at the moment, because we don't know what we're doing. Some businesses don't know what they're doing. Are they going to grow? They're going to stay? They can contract? Are they going to have more people working from home? And so on. So give that a little bit of thoughts, and then MJ, let's move on to the next slide when you can. That'd be very helpful. One of the what David touched on, the staff. One of the young lads in my team is saying, it's quite hard working from home too long, because no one can see me, no one knows what I'm doing. So out of sight, out of mind, which is always quite worrying. There we go. So what we've been touching on, half of you, just over half, have decided to get better quality space for your staff, which is great. And that's, I think, personally, that's the way it's going to be going. And I think David's right on his comments, what he was saying earlier. Just go to the next slide, please.
Thanks, Charlie.
You're right. Everything you say is correct, David. So just these three images I just put together is just the first one with the head open is just learning. It's what the office is for, is learning, mentoring elements of it. It's where that's how it all works, and obviously then we can take the business forward. The collaboration, out of sight, out of mind, I've talked about earlier. If people get worried about that, it's that first arrow pointing up to trust and the teamwork, and inspiration is absolutely spot on. That's the whole team success. And then mental health, I think that's so important at the moment. People working from home, I get, the issues I've got 3 children, and it's, I can't really work from home very well, I must admit, even though I've got a little office tucked away, and I'm quite lucky having that. But I prefer being in the office and the team environment, and that's just my choice. But everyone who's not allowed in the office, some companies have literally shut the door. You're not allowed back for 12 to 18 months. Some are coming back in September, some are coming back in April, Jess was saying earlier, which is lovely, getting more people into London as well. But I think it will just be better for everyone coming back together as well, and just becoming more positive and thinking. But one of the issues we've seen about having to work from home is the age of the younger staff, 20 to 30-year-olds who, this is all sweeping statements, by the way, but they've poor internet potentially, no space to work in if they're in a flat share of 3-4 people, and they struggle. So that's why we very much left the doors open to the younger guys coming in to work. The 30 to 40-year-olds, so the next step on, either just got married recently or with their partner having babies, and then just trying to work in that environment is an absolute nightmare. David, you had a baby recently, so you know what I'm talking about.
All too well, yeah.
And
that's what being back in the office.
Yeah, exactly. And then I put myself in this category, and I can't stand it. That's why I come to work. Is the 40 plus essentially is my teenage children tapping away next to me on an Xbox, or because I work in their playroom essentially, and pulling away the internet. It's just carnage. People can't do it. And for me, that mental health element, I just then I go and sit upstairs, and my daughter then comes and asks me to colour in, and I'm really not very good at colouring in, so that's where again another way I come into office. I colour outside the lines, but it's a change of scene as well. It's really important. And then what we've seen, the critical days of working, and it's the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It doesn't have to be that. Mondays for me have always been admin, but you've got to see the spread across the whole thing really. Do you want to go to the next slide, please? And then just really very quickly, I'll run through this and I'll stop because I've been waffling on too long. But the outset was what we did a lot of research back in April time last year. God, what we're going to be doing and so on. But redefine the business strategy is absolutely key. Redefine the people and what they do. There's unfortunately there's been some horrendous redundancies throughout the UK, but there's also been some amazing hires, and some of the good people will always get new jobs. And I think that's important. I touched on just a second ago, the flexi working, make sure that's done and get that correct with everyone and their staff, and making sure that's good. The going across, I saw these, I'm a bit cringy when I said, when you're reading these, the hyper production at home is an awful saying, but it's what I've read in one of my research, so I thought I'd pop it in. And the hyper collaboration in the office is, it's true, but the hyper bit maybe not so. And then the ratio of how you're going to be working, the hot desking versus collaboration, is it 50-50, 70-30? It's a real range, and I think that's really important. If you are staying in your offices and not exiting, get some advice from the design businesses which are out there. Your long-term view of what you're going to do with the business as well, how you're going to take it. We as Farebrother aren't sure. We're in the flexi working at the moment, and I think that's helping us. And also where to invest. I think technology is the way forward. Everyone's laptops are blowing up at the moment. But in training, I think we need to train some people back to how it is. They've been away from the office a lot for 12 months, so it's important. Like I said, redesigning existing offices, as I've touched on. I think there's another poll coming up as well on this slide as well, Marie. So this is more of, how would you, when you want to come in back in, if you wanted to come into the office 3 to 5 days a week, what would you prioritise and how you wanted it to be? So close to the train or tube, the quality of the building, how green the building might be, and essentially offer you other things than good quality.
It's probably a mix of all of them, Charlie, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I was trying to work out who would like to see what the outcome is. I'm going to, after this poll, David's going to take over, talk about his business, and also really dig deep in what people are thinking as well. So slightly different aspect to what I've been talking about, more on the managed and design and service co-working side of things.
Sure. Well, thanks, Charlie. Shall I kick off? Well, there you go.
There we go. Again, it's the same people voting for the same thing by the things. 15 of you, 56%. So
creatures of habit.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie. Okay. Hi, everyone. Do you mind getting? So, I mean, just a very quick bit of background on us. I thought that what I wanted to talk to you about is just some trends we're seeing specifically for occupiers, and sort of what a new product that's coming out to the market that's sort of really nascent at the moment, but is growing, and we think is sort of the future for a lot of occupiers of how they consume and take their space. A bit of background about us. I mean, I said so we're underneath the big well-known brands, we're probably one of the more established flexible working brands and companies in the UK. We've got 10 co-working spaces, 10 locations, working with plenty of big businesses that you may know on the left. We've actually got space in Holborn on Red Lion Street, which is a nice building that we recently opened. So you're more than welcome to pop your head in there if you want to see what we do. We've also recently launched a managed product in the market in partnership with Knight Frank, and I think it's really it's a really interesting product, and I think it'd be interesting for both landlords and occupiers. I thought I'd tell you about it. Do you mind going to the next slide? So just without reading through this, some really interesting trends that are happening. So first thing is, across the board, we're now seeing growing demand for bigger businesses, not only looking for fitted space, but also looking for service space. In the flex market, there's a market where lots of businesses go, particularly through, looking for flex space. There's now growing, what we've seen is just increasing demand year on year. Flex, service offices or managed spaces, predominantly, and Charlie, you'll know, historically were for smaller businesses, but that is only getting bigger and bigger. And one of the key things driving it is really two things. Number one, CapEx. So whether it's a managed or co-working space, it's a CapEx light option for occupiers. They don't have to pay for the fit out. It's expertly fitted out for them. And the second thing, which is linked to that, is term length. So what we're seeing now is businesses wanting shorter term leases. Charlie's definitely seeing it in the traditional market. Historically, it used to be, even on smaller suites, 5,000 square foot, it used to be a 10-year lease with a 5-year break. Now we're seeing a 5-year lease with a 3-year break, or even a 2-year break. So, the fact that occupiers want shorter term leases means that them delivering their own CapEx just doesn't make sense anymore. And so we're seeing a real move from occupiers looking that it was CapEx light, CapEx heavy, OpEx light. It's now moving towards CapEx light and slightly more OpEx heavy. The other trend that's really interesting now is that as we talked about, more and more occupiers are, as they downsize, are realizing that for them to run their own office is a hassle. And most aren't geared up to do it. So they have the option of going to a co-working space, which is all fully done for them. But obviously that's not it's not branded in there, it's not company branded, and they share the amenities. Or they have the option of managing their own space. But it always amazes me in the market, that when property is quoted, traditional property, and Charlie and I talked about it, they'll quote rent, rates and service charge for an occupier, but to run an office properly, there's a whole heap of other costs, and you need a team to do it. And I suppose it's a mix of those those trends and those things happening, which has sort of driven the birth of managed. And if you go to the next slide, I thought we'll talk through what managed is and how does it differ from co-working.
Can I just jump in, David? One of the things which David's helping us with and going forward is that a lot of our clients are, I'm just about to talk about your slide, trying to offer everything they can to a tenant coming in, because it's the solution at the moment. So if they want that Cat A, as the first element is, that's fine. And then if the service element, they have to go elsewhere unless it's in the building, or the managed element, or the fitted out. So, sorry, David, I'm talking about your slide. I apologise.
No, it's all right. Well, look, the way. So for occupiers now, there are sort of, historically there were two options. You'd either take a lease, which you'd fit it yourself, or you'd go into co-working, which was fitted for you. What we've seen recently now is landlords being advised by their agents to do fitted space. The problem, and fitted space is great, you don't pay for the capex, but you still have to manage the space yourself and deal with all the hassle of procuring utilities, the running it, the F&B, and all, etc. What manages is sort of the hybrid, the best between both worlds. So it marries up all the service benefits you get in co-working with all the benefits that most occupiers want for their own lease. That it's their own floor, it's their own amenity, it's their own brand. But with managed, it's fully catered for. So occupiers in managed not only get a fitted space, but they get it fully serviced. So occupiers get a completely hassle-free solution designed by experts, delivered by experts, and pay one fee. So they don't have to worry about rates increasing, costs of utilities going up, procuring cleaning people. So it's a really interesting model, and it's something now. It's sort of the evolution of what we've seen in the landlord market, which is Cat A plus, where landlords are willing to deliver a fitted solution. We're now seeing landlords, through people like us that we're partnering with yours product, actually to be able to deliver not only fitted but also managed. And if you go to the next slide, because I think this is the interesting point, is like, how does it work with pricing? Co-working is co-working really in all of our work life locations, up to a 25, 30 person business. It's good value and it makes sense. The issue is when you get to larger businesses, the currency changes, and you don't want to be paying on a desk. You want to pay by square foot. And also you don't want to share amenity. You want your own meeting rooms. You've got your own culture. And historically, managed really hasn't been an option for larger occupiers. They've either had to go to manage the space themselves or go to a lease, go to a co-working space. Where managed is, I thought this was interesting just to show you, I suppose, is all of the different elements that make up a traditional lease. So typically, if you look on the left-hand side, typically you've got, your rent, obviously there'll be some rent-free, hopefully, if you get someone like Charlie negotiating it for you. But you may be on the landlord side, so probably get someone to negotiate with Charlie. Business rates, service charge. Then what occupiers don't realise is there's a whole heap of costs, and especially now more than ever, if you're going to manage your office, if you want to make your office an environment that you want to attract your staff back into, it needs to be managed properly. So you've got the F&B, cleaning, network supply, internet, repairs and maintenance, etc., etc. You'll then have legal costs. You'll then have some fit out, because even if a landlord's doing a Cat A plus or a fitted solution for you, you're going to have to put your own AV in, your own branding in, etc. And so not only is it, so to take a lease, even if it's fitted, it's certainly less capex, but there's still a lot of management around it. The other option historically could be you could go to co-working. Co-working, similar to managed, is all inclusive. So occupiers typically get charged by the desk. You get shared amenity. You can book meeting rooms, etc. But you get your own office. But you can see, this is an example. Co-working can be anywhere from 30 to 50% more expensive than traditional lease, but slightly more flexible. You can have it from, rolling monthly, 12 months, 24 months. Managed, as we said, is sort of the hybrid of both. It delivers all the service benefits of co-working, in that it's completely hassle-free, but is priced more in line with traditional, where you've got your rent rate, service charge costs, plus your operational costs. And typically where managed is sitting is probably about 7% more expensive, 5 to 10% more expensive than traditional lease. And it's a product, because of the pricing, we see a lot of the market going towards this. And what we were talking about earlier, Charlotte, about that flight to quality, not only from a being able to customize your office in a way that works for your business, but also to customize the services and this, the experience you want to deliver to your staff. And because of this pricing, we think that managed is going to be the big growth part of this big growth story in the market, with more and more landlords now going to offer occupiers the ability to take Cat A, which less unfitted space, fitted, but also fitted and managed. And it's a cost plus model for occupiers. So occupiers can choose what services they would like, and it's added onto their rent with a small management fee. And so more and more, what we're expecting to see is more and more. This is a solution that we're offering. So if you go to our Yours website, you'll see all the different stuff, different options that we've got on, that we partner with landlords to deliver. And I think we're expecting this to be the real growth area, because the vast majority of businesses, we know they don't want, the vast majority of businesses we know doesn't want to fund capex now for short-term leases, but we think the vast majority, more and more businesses will be leaning towards a fully serviced, hassle-free solution for marginally more costs. And because of this, I think it's we expect to see managed being offered across more and more landlords, buildings and portfolios. And we think it's a great option for businesses. So hopefully that's interesting. I don't know if you guys have got any questions on it, but
yeah, I think just on my input into some of this, we're expecting to see more staff coming into the offices in April, when we're allowed to, or after Easter essentially. And I think that's the key bit, is what we'll see. And I think, David, you'll probably, and we'll still get more pickup of what people really want to do and what they want to go for.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's the problem we found in our market essentially is the amount of grey space, we call it second-hand space, which is really poor. And these poor tenants are trying to offload some of their poor quality space. It's going to be very hard to let, and people aren't that keen to take it. So thus that flight to quality is what we're seeing. But yeah, I think that some of the main businesses in London, as I said, the smaller ones, they're all coming back slowly. I think it's the big corporates around where I'm based in Chancery Lane. Unfortunately, when it was a bit darker, it's a bit lighter now, which is lovely. A lot of the lights are off in the buildings, and I can't see them in some of these. I use one of my clients, Wasserman, who are based in Aldwych House. They're not coming back till September. No one's been in the office since the first lockdown, and I think that goes a lot with a lot of these things. But these are the big global businesses who just made a view across the whole globe of how they're going to deal with things. David, you were saying before we started that some of your clients are coming back, but you seeing a more of an increase coming through of people coming through now?
Yeah, very gradual. We've seen people. Some businesses have been in the whole way through, and they've been there every day. We're starting to see. I mean, we've probably been at 10 to 20% occupancy on average, which is creeping up in terms of bums and seats, people actually in our spaces. But we're starting to see it pick up now. People looking, certainly new inquiries, people looking to get back in from, May seems to be the point that people are thinking about.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But lots of people, like I said, the big trend that was lots of downsizing.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going to be going forward for some time, isn't it? And how people will change their ways.
I mean, personally, I actually get, the days that I am working at home, which is probably one or 2 days a week, I actually don't get distracted and can get a bit more work done, less meetings. So I think there's definitely room for home working and flexibility, but they'll just need, different businesses will find the right balance for them.
Well, the real estate industry is renowned on a Friday afternoon that the office was empty anyway. So I think that most Fridays would be people working at home. But I think I totally agree. I love the mix. I'm completely embraced it, and I think, and then also with the stamp duty, which they obviously reduce, a lot of people have moved. Well, lots. Even in my firm of 20 odd, 3 or 4 people have moved out of town, so longer commutes, and they don't need to commute into town anymore. Just by they block their days up when they're in, and thus it creates that whole collaborative way of working when they are in. So Jess, have you had any questions come through at all?
I was going to invite everyone to submit their questions. I realise I forgot to tell everyone that at the start, but you should see along the bottom of your screen there is a Q&A button, so feel free to pop some questions in there, or alternatively pop them in the chat. And whilst you all do that, it gives me a chance to get in there first with my questions. So thank you guys, that was certainly very interesting. I suppose one thing that's been on my mind is, to what extent do you think this is a long to the past year?
Sorry,
sorry, I'll say that again. Yeah, to what extent do you see these options, these changes as being long-term shifts in the way we work and use our office space, and to what extent is it a short-term, perhaps, reaction to the past year?
Do you want to go?
Well, I think my answer is it's all long-term. I mean, the knee-jerk reaction, no one being in the office, is obviously short-term, but the focus on making a workspace that people want to come to that's well-run, that's not going anywhere. The focus on downsizing and providing better office environments, and businesses being more open to an agile and incentivize, so offer a more agile way of working, all long-term as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think David touched on it earlier with the corporates. Let's go back to that word. They would be more agile, weren't they, in letting people work from home a bit more leading up to it anyway. And I think we've just accelerated through the way we all work. And I completely agree. I think we've changed. We've embraced it. We've got to move on with it. And I think that the landlords, the providers of space, like David as well, if they don't embrace the change, I know David has and will continue to change. But if some landlords or even occupiers don't embrace it, then they'll lose a quality staff as well, and they won't move on with everything else. That's they have to change.
Thank you. So moving on to some of the questions from others. So from anonymous attendee, what types of quality amenities do you think are most likely to encourage staff back in?
David, you want to go first, and I'll add my bits in, because you've probably got more than I have.
I think, well, look, as a starting point, it's the basic stuff. So good quality, I mean, everyone talks about it, there's no secret. I mean, good quality showers and good bike racks and all that sort of stuff. But going more into detail, I think it's really going to be the quality of the offering and offices that businesses can put on, in terms of the space, how the space is designed and set up, which we obviously focus very heavily on in both the co-working and our managed product. And then how well they're run. You want to have it's got to be a really effective environment, a really functional environment for what people want. And I think businesses are going to have to be very intentional. Is this about space for collaboration? If it is, do we need the Zoom setups, etc. But there are some basic amenities, which always do. Like we said, bike racks and showers, being close to good retail. F&B is always nice. And then obviously it's not an amenity. I think it's a necessity for a lot of people for them to be. Those are still planning to come in by tube. That you're close to a train station, which is not really amenity, but I think it's almost a necessity. I mean, we only ever take stuff that's close to tubes, because otherwise it's very difficult for people.
Yeah. Well, what we're seeing with some of the buildings that we advise on and look after and so on is that the front of house essentially is now all the receptions. They're like hotels, reception. So the offering by the front of house, it's not just, can I sign you in and go up to your floor? It's a case of, some of the bigger buildings, albeit it is hotel style, dry cleaning, booking stuff if they need it, getting taxis, if there's none around, all sorts of stuff. It's that red carpet treatment, albeit you do pay for it via the service charge, but in the bigger buildings, it's an economy to cost, it's easier. But I think it's the apps which drive stuff through, which you can come the smarter buildings, which have, you can book stuff through that, and it tells you what's going on in the environment. There's a street food fair going on in New Street Square, for example, or Leather Lane. What's new coming through. Just in information, which is key, but also what we're seeing, in not necessarily all different sizes, if some spare space in the basement, turning that into studio space for, it's that well-being in sort of a horrible thing to say, but ticking that box for the tenants to say, actually, you can do your your classes, and you get people in to take whatever, give a yoga to whatever other style of class and people sign up to a course of 10 weeks, for example, and then they can use it. And obviously the showers, and as David's touched on, but there are more and more stuff, bits going in, which is more on the well-being side of things.
And even co-working itself in a bigger building is an amenity.
Yeah, absolutely.
To give businesses the ability to come out of their space and go and have breakout space there and memberships. Yeah,
and I know that's key for everything. And most of the bigger buildings want co-working in, and which is encouraging for all staff, because it's energy. Those lounge areas are energy. You come out of your own, maybe your boring office space, and you come into an energy area. But also that the fit out of offices is what David was touching on. It's key for the amenities of the staff within the space, and it's, bring your bowl of fruit, whatever it might be. WeWorks are very good at having all their breakfasts and everything else, and bringing pizzas and beers, but that's just a fad which will wear out. People aren't that keen. They're rather just the quality of the space.
Interesting. Thank you. So the next question is from Philip Woodgate. How do you see the space in the office changing? For example, more social and private spaces? Perhaps links a little bit to what you just told us.
Yeah, I think we've been advising a lot of the fit outs recently for our clients, and you just have that. I think I touched on earlier. You have your desk area, the open plan area, and then it's more those booths. It's more those telephone booths, which are just those little. They are literally telephone boxes in space, which you can move around if need be. For the private side of things, and those quieter times if you need to have them, and then it's just, I keep going back to that word energy. It could be around reception, where you've got breakout area in reception area, or around the kitchen area where there's a hub of people which collaborate and chat, making a cup of coffee, which hasn't changed in generations, no doubt. I think it's really important getting that right, though. David, I've been into many of David's work life centres, and they're actually spot on. Breakout amenity space, which is what it's all about these days.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's some basics. So, irrespective of the business, there's some fun. There are some definite design changes that will happen post this. And so we've been doing a big design exercise, thinking about how do we change our offering across the products. Smaller meeting rooms, less likelihood that you're going to need that everyone's going to be in for these big board meetings. More video conferencing. Charlie mentioned booths, but yeah, lots of those video. But not actually, we have private phone booths, but actually now making them your ability to have 1 or 2 person conference Zoom calls in there. And then there's been, a lot of businesses now will move away from dedicated desks for each of their employees. So they'll be engaging with hot desking, which works for some businesses, it doesn't work for others. And then it really depends how a business is going to use their office. But a lot of businesses that are now thinking about it as a space for collaboration more than everyday work, depending on how far along they're going to go with agile work, enabling their staff to work at home. And then that changes the layout completely. You take away desks, and it was many of the desks, and it's actually about having more little presentation suites, little collaboration areas. But there's some fun, there's some simple changes like video conferencing that everyone's going to now have to have in their offices, and most likely a lot of businesses moving away from dedicated desking, which is in a business's interest to do it. Because I think that on average, I don't know what the stats is, but I think a desk is only used 70% of the week. Across the board. So because people are always out of meetings, they've got a day off, they're on holiday, they're doing, So having a desk for everyone was always inefficient, which is why for businesses the last few years have been moving towards agile working and hot desking.
Can lead to quite interesting interactions as well with colleagues, rather than sitting next to the same people day after day. You're mingling with everyone in a much greater way.
Yeah, and there's an incentive for the businesses to do it because it will save space. It's all about utilization.
Yeah, we just a bit of experience from us. We recently bought some desktop computers before our lease expired, and obviously getting our functionality of working wasn't right for the team. How we remoted into the stuff off the hot desking system, and we've had to sort of go back to that. Right, this is your desk, because it means that guys can work better again, and because our technology side was failing. So that's why I touched on earlier, invest in technology and training, because it's, I'm back to lift my laptop up, then I use my laptop with a docking station, but others don't. And, that's the way things go. You just pick it up and move, and go any way you like. That's absolutely right, Jess. I don't know how you guys operate where you are. Hayes Mac, do you got your own desk, or you?
It's a mix. It's a combination. I have my own desk, but a lot of the staff who spend a lot of time with clients, hot desk. But interestingly, we did our own survey last year before COVID, and as David said, I think we found that every space was being used about 60-70% of the time. So reviewing our office setup was already on the agenda even before COVID. It's just accelerated it.
So you can immediately take out 30% of the space contributed to desk.
Absolutely.
You can probably take out 30% of the meeting room space because there's less usage.
Yeah.
So it's been inefficient for a lot of businesses. But
I'm sad. My desk is right next to a beautiful window overlooking the river. I'm a little reluctant to give it up, but if I'm not using it, I get why. I get why it's needed.
Yes.
Lovely. Sorry, just the next question that's come through. How easy is it to find sustainable office space currently, and what does sustainable look like in the office context?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's the greener element of buildings is very key at the moment. If you look at all the big investment funds, Aberdeen Standards, Schroders, whoever, there's a massive list. They are really only buying the greener side of buildings now, or a building which is so not that side, but creating that green building. And when we say green, it's down to the qualities of air conditioning and how you operate, brown water recycled, all sort, I could list the ESG side of things, EPC, being a good quality. And I think it's more and more people are looking at this. I think if the day-to-day, if I was looking to space, into offices for clients of below 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, it's not so typical of what they're looking for. They just want good quality and amenities. But the sort of the greener side is where buildings are having to adapt to get the bigger corporates, because they won't go into it. It's that carbon footprint and how they can, how it's used essentially. There is a long list. I mean, I'll update on another time, but it can be, the bits I've touched on are the main elements, which is AC and so on, and how they can recycle in the building. David, what's your policy on how you take your space?
We've just become B Corp certified, so it's a big thing. I mean, our team are very passionate about it. And so, you talked about the building. In terms of our operation, it's about sustainable partners that you're working with, suppliers, recycling, etc. It should be important to everyone. I mean, but yeah, land. I mean, there's been historically lots of inefficiency. I mean, you think about these huge buildings, you're leaving the AC on for hours when people aren't there, lights on for, I mean, it's huge, where the windows aren't reflective, so light comes in, you've got to power up the AC. I mean, there's a big opportunity to be way more efficient in the construction industry, and there's pressure for them to do it.
And also during the pandemic and people coming back to the office, question I did a viewing yesterday, and 13,000 square foot office floor, where they sort of, can we open the windows? I'm like, well, you can, but it will completely knock the AC out the way it's collaborated. So it's yes, you can, because they use those big Allen keys. I'm sure you all see them, but
yeah,
it's counterproductive. So the way that you've changed, well, actually we put filters on them now, which do filter the air even more. So
you can't beat an openable window. I do think it's a shame that you can't open these windows. Like, we go to some offices that you don't have openable windows.
I don't disagree with that.
I like it. I like to open a window. Simple. Get some polluted London air in.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I think we've already come to the end of our time for questions. But thank you so much, both to Charlie and David, for that presentation. Certainly a lot of options to consider, a lot of thinking for all of us to do now. Also need to thank Marie Dunn at Farebrother for her help with the logistics and technical side of things and the slides, always crucial. And obviously thank you to Farebrother as a whole for hosting. So lovely to pop on to the next slide. So just briefly to talk through our forthcoming events. You can all read them on the slide, but we've got the on-screen and in the spotlight communications in a digital world on the 21st of April. Then back to business on the 25th of May. That'll be interesting. We can all reflect on how we've changed our office space. And director's duties on the 22nd of June. And pop on to the next slide. Just a reminder, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, so do network online between events. I think keeping in contact with one another feels more important now than ever. Until we can all start seeing each other in person over a glass of wine, let's make the most of Twitter and LinkedIn to keep in touch. Amazing. So thank you, everyone. Hope everyone has a lovely day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, see ya.